Hello and welcome. This is Accounting on Excel with Amaka Ifebanando, the Excel coach. And in this training, I'll be showing you how to design an Excel template that computes personal income tax, also known as Paye, pay as you earn in Nigeria. So let me show you what we'll be designing before we go right into the training. So here we have the employee code, we have the basic salary, housing allowance, transport allowance, seniority bonus, monthly gross income. All these are monthly details for each employee. And here we calculated the gross income. In this column, there is a formula here. So we calculated the annual pension, employee pension, which is 8% as the law, statutory law states. Then we have the annual NHF, the National Housing Fund. Then we have the annual gross income for computing CRA. Now, based on the Finance Act 2020, this is where the trick comes in. There is a redefined gross income for computing the consolidated relief allowance. So we have to remove all the tax exempt items from the gross income to arrive at this annual gross income, which we'll be applying to calculate the consolidated relief allowance. You'll see that while we go into this training. So here we have the consolidated relief allowance, then we have our annual tax relief, the total annual tax relief, then the annual taxable income, after which we now apply the tax table. The first 300,000, you apply 7%, the next 300,000. This is automated. So I'll show you how you will automate this process and makes it easy for you. So you now have your annual tax payable and monthly tax payable. So before we dive into it, there is just some things I would like you to have in mind. Have in mind that the employee pension is 8% of basic housing and transport. So for the basic housing and transport, you add those three, apply 8% to arrive at the employee pension based on statutory law. Then we have the National Housing Fund, which is 2% of the basic. Now, to calculate the consolidated relief allowance, we apply this law. First, the 20% of the gross income for CRA. So the gross income for CRA for calculating consolidated relief, as I've showed you up here, we will be applying that 20% on this. Then you plus the higher of 1% of gross income for CRA or 200,000. So while we get there, you'll see how this is computed, and we'll now apply this percentage below on the taxable income to arrive at our tax payable. Right, so this is what I'll be showing you in this training. So to work along, I'll be dropping the practice file in the comment section. There'll be a link for you to download the practice file in the comment section. I'll advise you to download it, work along as I show you a step-by-step process on how to design this template that helps you compute personal income tax. Right, so let's go right into the training. I'll see you on the other end. Okay, welcome. So as I've stated, we have our employee details here. All these details here are monthly details: basic salary, housing, transport allowance, seniority bonus. Remember, I had a training my last video training, I showed you how to design a template that computes this. So if you have not watched that, please do well. I'll drop the link in the comment section for you to watch. I can also drop it somewhere around this video, up right on this video for you to watch. Right, so then we have our monthly gross, which is sum of all this. Good. So we need to add the monthly gross income needs to sum the basic, all the elements of the employee's salary to arrive at the monthly gross. So I guess I didn't do that, so we'll have to do this here and sum all this. Here we go. So I can just fill down. Good. Here we go. So to arrive at our annual gross income, you just times this by 12. So we already have 12 in this cell. So you just lock it by pressing F4 because we're going to be filling it down. So this is our annual gross because this computation is done annually so that after we arrive at our tax payable, we can divide by 12 to get the monthly tax payable. So for the annual employee pension, remember I showed you the hints. Employee pension is 8% of basic housing and transport. So you see equals to 8% times the sum of basic, this is basic housing transport, right? So close the brackets and we need to times it by 12 because we want the annual. So what I'll do is I would like to just close this bracket so that when the result from this computation, you just times it by this 12, right? Then lock your 12 so that the formula can be automated. Now, before I click enter or I click on the enter button, I always want to review my formulas because a lot of I need a lot of dynamic formulas in this computation in designing this template. So you notice the H2 needs to be fixed. It's not yet fixed because I'll be filling this formula downwards. So I'll just go highlight it and press F4. F4, good. So the other things are okay, good to go. So I can just click enter, good. So I can just fill down, good, good. So because I omitted an adjacent cell, I can just say ignore this error, good. So now let's do the same thing for annual national housing fund. So it says our annual national housing fund, the hint says is 2.5% of basic. So you say equals to this times we apply the basic only 2.5% basic. So this is the monthly. So to get the annual, I will just close this bracket, open and close this bracket. Then I will times by 12. So remember, make your formula dynamic. So I'll apply absolute reference to this and my I2 should be absolute. So I2 should be absolute. So you press your F for good. So my formula is good to go. Control Z, yes, good. So I can fill downwards. Yes, we're good to go. So what's our annual gross income for CRA? What's our annual gross income? These are the tax exempt. These are things we need to take away from the gross income in order to get our annual gross income, another gross income. But the essence of this gross income is to calculate consolidated relief allowance. That's just the essence of it. After we calculate our consolidated relief allowance, we won't be needing it again. So you just say equals to this gross income minus the sum of the tax exempt items. These are non-taxable items, so we want to remove them. All right, and there we go. So we can fill downwards. Good. So this is our annual gross income for computing consolidated relief allowance. So the next thing is for us to compute consolidated relief allowance. So let's go back to our hint. What's this say? 20% of gross income, 20% of gross income for computing consolidated relief allowance. So 20% of the gross income for, and then plus, this is the fixed. So plus the higher of 1% of gross income or 200,000. So it says equals to 20%. So we'll make this absolute by pressing F4 because we want to, of this annual gross income, right? 20% of it. Then plus maximum of, because it says the higher, so apply the max, the higher of 1%, make it absolute, F4, 1% of the same gross income for the purpose of computing consolidated relief allowance. or 200,000. So I'll just put in the 200, 1, 2, 3. So whichever is higher, then add it to the 20%. Right? I believe we are good to go. Good. So this is it. So it says 20% of your gross income, annual gross income for computing consolidated relief allowance. When you get that, plus maximum of either of this, 1% of the gross income for computing consolidated relief allowance, or 200,000. So the maximum of it, you apply it to the 20% of this to arrive at your consolidated relief allowance. Good. So that is how you you arrive at that. So you can just fill your formula downwards, ensure them. Good. So the next is our annual tax relief. Annual tax relief are those things we need to deduct in order to arrive at our tax, the amount that will be taxed, right? So this is the consolidated relief allowance, which is part of it. Then these two tax exempt, not taxable items. So you say equals to, we are summing these two items and this one. So close the bracket. Good. So this is our annual tax relief. So what's the annual taxable income? The annual taxable income now is your annual gross income. This one, not this. So the annual gross income minus the annual tax relief. That is now your annual taxable income. I believe we are following, right? So having arrived at this, I believe we've gone beyond 50% of the tax. So the next thing to do is to apply the tax table on the taxable income. And this is where I would just want to impute one formula and we autofill to arrive at this, right? So for the first 300,000, we'll apply 7%. Now, when you remove that 300,000, you look for the next 300,000, apply 11%. When you remove the 600, look for the next 500,000, apply 15%. So that is the idea. So you have 7 points. Let's say, let me use this one that is, okay, let me use 2.350. 2.350. So you apply 300, 300. You know, at this point, you've already applied 1.6. So you say 2,350,720 minus 1.6. So you definitely know that the remaining is not even up to this 1.6. So you still apply this percentage to the balance. So first of all is to understand the way this tax table works and know how to apply it. So that is why I'll be automating this process, having an understanding of it. You can just follow me closely. If there is need for you to rewatch this to have a better understanding, please do. Right, so we'll be using the if function, nested if function. So the first is this, we'll say if this particular annual income, you minus it from the sum. So I'll just put this cell. I want this cell to be progressive, all right? So I'll make this first M2 absolute. You'll understand when I'm done. F4, then I'll just make the row absolute here. So you can press F4 like 3 times. Okay, 2 times, yeah, that's good. So if that's the gross income minus the sum of these is less than or equal to 0, just give me empty, right? That's it. Then I'll now put another if function because it's a nested if. The next thing I'm testing is if this M, okay, I need to make the column absolute. So I'll press F4 3 times. The same thing here. I'll make this column absolute. Press F4, good. So we're good to go. So if the annual taxable income minus the sum of these. So because I'll be filling this formula all through the right and right down. So I have to be very mindful on making it dynamic so that it will be easier. So this, I'll just lock the row alone. So if it is greater than or equal to this, so this, I'll lock the row to, making it so. If it is greater than this, then we'll say this percentage, we'll lock the row to F4 times this. We'll also lock the row. Good. So the next criteria is, if it is not, what should it do? So because if it is greater than or equal to this, so if it is not, what should it do? So it should just, I'll open this bracket because I want to minus this from the sum. I'll make this absolute, the column absolute here, minus the sum of this cell to this cell, while making the first M2 absolute. I'll make the first M2 absolute. So you press F4. Then the second M2, just make the rule absolute. F4. Good. So if the sum of these, so we'll get this, what we'll do is this minus this, because we are saying if this is greater than equal to this particular cell, you should times it by 7%. But if it is not, you should just times it, look for the balance and still times it by the same 7%. Yes, that's it. You look for the balance and still times it by the same. So I have to close, I have two brackets. Remember, I started with a bracket here, so I have to close that bracket. Good. So, and I'll still times it by that 7. So I will lock the row. F4, lock the row. So I know this might look a little bit advanced, but just practice, you definitely get to understand it right. So I can now close the bracket and enter. Good. So definitely the first 7% on 300,000 should be 21. So all of them are quite higher than 300,000. So I'll just fill this way and let's see. I'm supposed to stop here. Good, we are there. This is what we want. So the process has been automated. So you notice that for this amount, you see the first 300, 300. At this point, we've already reached, okay, at this point is 1.6. So we have 2.585. So 1.6 minus 2 points, you understand? So definitely the net will not be up to 1.6. So the balance is now applied. So you can say 2.858800 minus the total of this, which is 1.6. When you get the balance, apply 21% to it. It should give you this, so that you can just confirm our formula to be sure that it is accurate. So if you notice the formula in this column, you see that the formula is giving us an inconsistent result from what we want in this column. For this column, we want Excel to apply 24% to any balance that is above 3,200,000. So we need to change it. I think this is above, not next. It should be above. So when Excel computes your annual taxable income, it has applied the first 300,000, the next 300,000, 500,000, 500,000, then 1,600,000. So when you sum this, you see this is 3,200,000 has been taxed already. So if your taxable income is above this total, the balance will apply 24% to it. So that's the law. So we'll go down here. I think I need to correct this. This will be 24% on, not the next now, on above 3,200,000. So at this point, we've applied first 300,000. We've applied 7% on the first 300,000. We've applied 11% on the next 300,000. We've applied 15% on the next 500,000. We've applied 19% on the next 500,000. We've applied 21% on the next 1,600,000. Right. So we are to apply 24% on anything above 3,200,000. So if the employee's annual taxable income is above 3 million, because you've applied from this point to this point, you've applied 3,200,000. So anything above that will apply 24% to it. Now, looking at what we have here, we'll notice that the output we are getting here is not giving us what we really want. What Excel did was to apply 24% on 3,200,000, but we want Excel to apply 24% on any amount above 3,200,000, considering the annual tax income and the rate, the amount that we've applied tax rate to. So for instance, for this first employee with 7,168,000, let's say what is the balance when we deduct 3,200,000. So this is the annual taxable income. So minus the total amount that has been taxed. When you sum this point to this point is 3,200,000. So I will just either sum it or I use it. So I better use this, right? So that we can just understand. So you see that the balance is 3,968,000. Now, if we apply 24% to this, you see that it is not the same with this. This here is giving us 768,000 because it applied 24% to 3,200,000, not on 3,968,000. So let's apply 24% to this and let's see the outcome. Times 24%. So this is it. So this is what we expect Excel to pop up for us, right? So I'll just copy this and paste as value so that we'll just use it as a guide when we tweak the formula a bit. Good. So what do we need to do in order for Excel to accurately give us the result we want in this column especially? We need to tweak this a bit, because here we are having 3,200,000. So definitely, as long as the balance is equal to or more than 3 million, Excel will apply 24% to this rather than the balance. So what I did and that worked was to impute the word above here, the same criteria by law, above. Immediately I put above before the value. You see, it immediately computes all this. So mind you, this is a text in front of a value. So what Excel did is this. We have our formula. So it tested that particular criteria, which is this criteria here. And because it is false, it is not true, it immediately went back down to this, minus, got the balance and applied the 24% to it. So that is just what Excel did, right? So that's how we tweak the formula to arrive at the accurate taxable income for the remaining balance of taxable amount that is above 3,200,000. So you will see that our formula is automated 100%. So you just need to plug and it will play, right? You just need to put in the employee details and everything will compute automatically. One formula, everything computes automatically. So now let's compute the annual tax payable. I will apply the tax table to compute the tax payable for each of this percentage. What is the annual tax payable? It's just for us to sum this and we arrive at the annual tax payable.
and this is it. So this is the annual tax payable for each employee. So what's the monthly tax payable? You just say this divide by 12. Right, this divide by 12, and there you go. So this is the amount on a monthly basis you remit to the relevant tax authority. Right, so this is how you go about computing employees' personal income tax. This is how you go about it, putting into consideration the Nigerian tax law. I believe we've gotten value from this. Please, if you have gotten value from this, give this video a thumbs up, like this video, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload value tips as this. And do well to share with as many that you know that will benefit from this particular training. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next training. Bye for now.